in terms of social, or social business, to give it its correct moniker as it's being used right now, many companies will feel that they're doing social if they've got a Facebook page, if they've got a Twitter profile, if they've got a LinkedIn group. But it's much more than that, isn't it? It's more about then having a social networking presence.
It's really about embedding social capabilities into the way that you do business. So do you really need a Facebook page to be social? Not at all. Ultimately, you're giving people an external forum where they can meet, and Facebook will participate in that process by giving you certain metrics and providing a platform where people can meet, but you can do the same thing internally. You can do the same thing on an external site that is not Facebook, but it's about the brand value that Facebook brings. You know, it's like going to a well-known hotel. You go there because it has brand value, because the room is always available, because people understand it, because there's a level of quality around it. And that is what Facebook has brought to the social marketing type environment. And also they're part of that process of getting people used to the idea of sharing information in interesting ways. And from an internal perspective, we do things differently. Mm-hmm. So we always share, but we tend to do it in a non-technical way. We don't tend to leave those artifacts lying around. You know, we don't tend to leave those files lying around in a way that can be socialized. So we resort back to very traditional tools such as email, such as fax. Seriously, people still use fax. You know, we'll tend to do things very much the way it's been done, but that's primarily because it's almost like we leave our personal side at the door when we come to work. So you've got organizations who have now accepted that if I do not provide those capabilities within work, people will provide it of their own. So as an example, some organizations have nailed down the use of Facebook and Twitter at work. But yet I can take out my mobile and access Facebook and Twitter. I may as well do it on my corporate network, because there is no, you know, the security implications are different than I think people expected. From a social business perspective as opposed to a social perspective, it's about, again, embedding the way that we interact in a way that supports different business processes. You know, how do I share information among a number of colleagues? And there's a lot of implicit information there. Now, we do a lot of internal sharing and a lot of social, I'm not going to say social networking. We tend to do things in a very social way within IBM. And it's been a long cultural journey, but it's now become second nature to all of us. But we don't have to overtly share stuff to get value out of what we're doing. As an example, I can look at a file within our shared environment, and I have no shortage of content at my disposal now that everything is typically within a social environment. But I can look at a file and see how many versions exist of that, how many comments, you know, are associated with that, how long it's been there, how many downloads have taken place, who's commented, who has reshared, why have they reshared, what are the comments associated with that when they reshared. And without even downloading it, I can get a really good indication of the value that's going to bring me. And so I can go, actually, that's brilliant. I can see enough comments in there to know that that file is not relevant, or I can see that to know that it's exactly what I want. Or I can see a number of people who have downloaded it, and I can find them on same time and say, I noticed you downloaded that. What did you think? Why did you find it of value? Is it still relevant based on the following bits of information, or this particular version that's just come out? Does that change things? And so what I've done is I've converted a non-social interaction based on a load of artifacts that existed, and I can now make a telephone call, which has nothing to do with a tool. It's just down to the way that social mindset is now deeply embedded in the culture.
Do you think the collaborative journey that IBM itself has gone on as an organisation, and the fact that you're following, you know, your own methodology and using your own tools and technologies to help share information within the company a lot more effectively, helps you when you're working with customers? Obviously, your role is very focused on working with customers. Do you think the fact that you're going through the same sorts of things as a business will have really helps when you're dealing with customers directly?
Of course. I mean, we wear the scars. You know, you can't turn up to a client and say, well, the product offers you this if you haven't seen it break, if you haven't seen it not work in certain situations, if you haven't seen it work brilliantly in certain situations. And it's really just about the technology. So we provide a technology like a number of other clients provide technology, but we've delivered these social capabilities to 450,000 people. You know, it's a scale that you rarely see within an enterprise, and that's taught us a lot of lessons about what works well, why it works well, what parts of the business needs to be integrated to make that work well. And when we go to a smaller customer, even 50 users, 100 users, and they say, yeah, but we're not 400,000 people. And my response is, but it's the same thing. It's about small groups of people sharing. When I sit in front of a CIO or a CTO and I say, here is what we experienced internally, here is what we've seen happen externally, it carries some credibility because we really have gone through that journey. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a number of years in some instances, and depending on the culture of the organization, it may take months. It all depends on the organization that I'm speaking to. But I don't believe that you can credibly work with clients if you haven't made the mistakes beforehand. So you look at some of these smaller companies who are 100, 200, 300, 500 people worldwide, and you have to wonder, what have they seen to suggest that they're a safe pair of hands? Now, I'm not suggesting they're not a safe pair of hands, but I think bringing a lot of grey hair and scars to the table has a lot to speak for.
It certainly sounds like there's many facets to this, and it's not an overnight success story for businesses to change and embrace the ways of social business. And it certainly feels to me that it's technology is a core part, but it's also about people, it's also about culture, it's also about processes. So a lot of food for thought there for me in terms of how businesses need to change, and the fact that it's perhaps not a race. They have to do it at their own pace.
No, that's a very good point. It's hardly a race. The difficulty, however, is that many organizations are under pressure to deliver on a quarterly basis, and it may seem like a race. So, I'd like you to save X% this quarter. I'd like you to make more this quarter. I'd like to see a difference in this behavior or that behavior or the way that we work with our clients, and I want instantaneous gratification. That's not so easy when you're talking about people. The thing that social really highlights is the complete unpredictability of individuals, of the unplanned nature. And that's part of the benefit. Because things are unpredictable, because they're unplanned, sometimes people surprise you amazingly by delivering incredible bits of innovation or sharing or just reducing costs like you could never imagine or creating ideas like you never thought of because it wasn't part of the plan. And the fact it wasn't part of the plan means that no one could put a process around it and constrain how successful it was. People have surprised you because of, that's just generally what people do. They do brilliant things and they surprise you.